I want to just mention that we have a couple members of the Bothell Library Advisory Board in the audience. So if y'all would just stand up and wave hello. You guys have any questions? Please reach out with them afterwards. And we're going to start with Margaret Turcotte from the Bothell Historical Society, who is doing this presentation today in partnership with us. She is also the author of a wonderful book of old photos about Bothell. And we have, she will have those for sale as well. We have one library copy, but I think it might have been checked out already. And so she's going to introduce our iconic guests.
Thank you. Well, about a year ago, okay, about a year ago, okay.
What do you want for Christmas?
Well, let me think about that. Oh, that's my husband. Anyway, about a year ago, a little more, in July of 2017, we received some information about a barn that Paul was interested in our area. Well, it took a while for them to determine, and us to determine it was in our area, but it was so exciting because this guy here came out, and I wrestled as many people as I could get from the Historical Society, which was me and Sue, pretty much. And so I made a copy of that article. It's out there if you want to see it. And so I got to talk to both Paul and Jean during that time, and it was really exciting. I knew about that Paul was getting ready to donate all of his 390,000 items to the Seattle Library. Is that right?
Estimate, yeah.
Okay.
Where's the Clay? Clay, are you here?
Clay?
Clay counted them,
Yeah, Clay counted them.
so it's an estimate.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm here to introduce my two favorite guys today, and I'm going to read you a little paragraph or sentence from the book that you should buy today. And it says, indefatigable purveyor of what has become over the past nearly 37 years a beloved citywide institution entitled Seattle Now and Then. And we're so thrilled to have Paul here, and then Jean, who's been doing the Now pictures for the last 12 years or so. And so I don't want to take any more of your time. We're just thrilled to have both of you here today, and thank you so much for coming to our sweet little town. So here you go.
Thank you, Margaret. Thanks a lot. And it's nothing serious between me and Margaret. It's casual, but it's...
I should go sit by him.
Yeah, you should go. Well, we are celebrating, first of all, Paul turned 80 on October 28th this year. And this is almost 4 decades doing this work, and or maybe more. Is it more?
Well, the Times, 30, how many years?
37.
37, when I was doing local history for quite a few years before that.
Well, we do begin with a short bio of Paul.
Oh, gosh.
I know. He always blushes when we do this, but this is actually our 22nd and last full show of the year. So we're going to go to University Bookstore and do a couple short presentations next Saturday, hoping to catch the very tail end of desperate Christmas sales. But you guys are it. So give yourselves a hand. You're seeing the presentation in its full flowering at this point. And
It should be as sharp as tacks. Should impress you with our gift for seeming extemporaneous platter. In fact, it's all scripted. That's true. I have it written right here.
That's right. Margaret has appeared at every one of our shows. What you just not kidding. So let's begin with our mini bio of Mr. Dorpat.
Yeah, let's do that.
A program for all America. And now here he is, Mr. This Is Your Life himself, Ralph Edwards.
He quickly left me and went to himself. You saw that? Okay.
Okay, so here we go. Well, this is Paul at the tender age of 4 or 5, and we call it the war years. What do you title this, Paul?
We titled that "Saving the World for Democracy." It's World War II, about 1942. Backyard of the parsonage on Reeves Drive in Grand Forks, North Dakota. My dad was a Lutheran preacher, Emmanuel Lutheran Church, about 10 blocks from the parsonage. Remember the North Dakota flood about 10 years ago, the big flood in North Dakota? That was right there. It was underwater.
Well, let's go forward. We're going to now jump back a couple years, and here's Paul sitting, the baby of the family, sitting on the lap of his eldest brother, Ted, and behind him, the handsome one, who is
Norman. Did you know Norman?
And who's this? Who's the one that's not so handsome?
David, on the left upper one?
I think he's pretty handsome too.
Oh, they're all pretty. I was the one who wasn't so gifted. Yeah.
Oh, look at that face.
I got big feet, though.
Yeah. Well, I went back about 15 years ago with Paul to one of his brothers' or relatives' houses, and we took the photo of the 4 of them standing side by side, our first then and now.
They're all gone now. I'm the last one of everybody in our nuclear family. I'm the last one. I don't feel so good.
This is his elder brother, Ted. This is the handsome one who you can see has a glass of wine. I think that goes with being handsome as you get the wine.
Yeah, he was a cool, relaxed guy. Yeah. All right.
And here we have Paul with his dad.
And my mom. Ida Garina, or Cherry for short. She had a good sense of humor.
How did Ida Garina become Cherry?
Well, no one wanted to remember Ida Garina. So they called her Cherry.
And there's
It looks like a cherry with those sort of, those
cherry lips.
cherry lips and cheeks and stuff, yeah. We could vote on it. Should we
Sorry,
vote on it?
if you want to go back, you want to vote on it, whether she looks like a cherry? No, they don't. They're shaking.
Okay.
So we jump forward a number of years to mid-late 60s, and Paul founded the Helix. And I have to say, as a 10-year-old, I remember cutting out the back pages and putting them on my wall just to offend my mom.
Front pages.
Because the back page often had posters. It often had cool posters and all, the general, the most, as far as I was concerned as a 10-year-old, the disreputable, the outlines of breasts
We
and
didn't do that very often.
whenever you did it, it went on my wall.
We were fairly prudent and sober and steadfast. Demure we were.
You weren't demure. In fact, within a year or so of the founding of the Helix, Paul became a concert promoter, and this is his Sky River concert that he produced.
I mean, I was one person in doing it.
Right.
I wasn't solely responsible. The person who did the poster there is a name many of you will remember, Walt Crowley.
Oh, yeah.
Raise your hand if you remember Walt Crowley. It's amazing, that guy really got him. That's because he always signed his name about that big, Even in the Helix, he was doing it that big. Walt was very talented, very good writer and heck of a drawer.
Well, this is the poster he did for it, and look at the names that came to this event, from Santana to the Youngbloods to Richard Pryor to, this is a real lineup. This is kind of astonishing.
Most of them came too.
Well, here we are at the actual festival, and there's Paul with... Who is this, Paul?
That's the novelist. Which novelist is that, you guys?
Tom Robbins.
Right, Tom Robbins, yeah. That's the first day of the festival, I think.
And Paul's wearing his saffron robes.
Yeah, my only wore that part of that day, then it became a little embarrassing, and I exchanged it for something that was more commonplace, like jeans and a
Oh, wow.
yeah, that's me.
Well, we always ask if how many attendees of the Sky River Rock Festival are in our audience. And usually we get one or two. Anybody? Oh, there we go. 3, 4. Well done. And then we always ask, were any of you in this photo? Someone has actually said they were on the hill up above where this photo was taken. I think a couple shows ago they said, oh yeah, I was up there on the hill.
Well, that's a lot of people were, because it was on the hill and the water was going down. And there's some trees up there. And they were building shelters up there.
Fun times. Well, we'll jump forward another decade, and we're now looking at 294 glimpses of Seattle, and Paul produced this and sold it for a penny a glimpse.
294 cents. It was a benefit for the mayor's Small Business Task Force. So we were surprised how popular it became. We sold, I thought it was 40,000. I think what was they said somewhere I searched, somebody interviewed recently, we did 4 printing, 10,000 copies each. 40,000, isn't that something? That's right. We were claiming to set a record for the popularity of a local publication. Of course, it was partly dependent upon there being nothing around here quite like it, but more importantly, it was only 294 pennies to buy it.
You know, it strikes me that having Google, having internet access, it really, you can sell 40,000 copies of photos of Seattle, whereas today, if we go online, we can find a heck of a lot of marvelous photos of Seattle. So that may be...
Maybe we shouldn't have done that book.
Yeah, I think
where is that book? Do you have a copy?
It's one right in front of us. Well, within a few months of this booklet coming out, Paul started his column at the Seattle Times, and in '82, so it has been 37 years. We're just coming up on the 37-year anniversary. And here he is standing with a historian that I'm assuming most of you know. A book he wrote in the 50s has never been out of print. And
Anybody know who that is?
I heard it. Shout it out. Someone said Murray Morgan.
Yeah, Murray Morgan, right, yeah. How many know who Murray Morgan is? About half of you, okay. Well, you should read his History of Seattle, which was published at the centennial of the city, so that would be the early 50s. It's called Skid Road. And he wrote very well. It's really entertaining and truthful, so.
And he was kind of your we call him a mentor. He was a friend and
Definitely a mentor, yeah, definitely a teacher. Very good teacher, yeah.
By the mid-'80s, early mid-'80s, Paul was making a point of interviewing elderly folks who had experienced significant events, and they told him their stories. This is Lucy Campbell Coe, who was a witness to the Seattle fire.
I told her, Lucy, good to meet you, but if you don't have anything to tell me about the fire, I don't want to talk to you. She did have something to tell me about the fire, as did 3 other people. And I was just kidding, by the way, don't look worried. And yeah, she was a delightful person. I visited her very often. She was also a good, her mother did very well with a camera. And I used probably a half a dozen photographs that her mother took. Really unique, important photographs, and at least one of them is in this book.
Well, let's go forward now to 2011, when Paul and I and our friend Berenger did a show at the old Mohai called Simply Now and Then. And in the foyer were Berenger's photos of Paris now and then. And in the main section, we did statewide and citywide repeats. And so Berenger took this picture of us standing in the lobby, and here are the 3 of us on Paul's back porch. There's Berenger. Mark her because you're going to see her in just a moment. We visited her in Paris in 2005, and I'm going to show you something that's completely off topic and off the wall, but we find it delightful. And it will be our final showing for the year. So let's take a look and...
Are we leaving then, or what?
yeah,
Leaving this place?
No, we leave this place, yeah. Okay. So here we go. It's a little video of our visit in 2005.
Oh, that's incredible. He looks very much like me, doesn't he? He does. With the glasses, with the glasses. Here we go. Take this video. Okay.
This is Paris, you know, Paris.
So Paul gets up and starts to walk away, and Beranger says, "No, go back, I gotta get a picture." So he returns. She'll take the picture, and then after about 15-20 seconds, watch as they both look up at me. And the camera begins to shake because I can't stop myself from laughing. Isn't that, I have never encountered my double in this life, but, so that was a little mini miracle, and so here's Berenger's photo.
Are we going now, or?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you very much for that kind applause.
And this is, you know, I'd be suspect. I'd be thinking that, you know, Paul and his dad and mom traveled to Paris and left behind a twin or something. But I know they went to
They
Paris.
did go to Paris after this, yeah.
No, before this.
Before this.
Oh, it works, doesn't it?
It does work.
Well, Berenger tracked this guy down, and it turns out he was a Romanian Orthodox priest, and he had just received an award for the restoration of his lovely Central Paris church. He's still, you know, this is 2012, 2013. They have both aged well together. I love the glasses. Look at that.
He was amused, Berenger, they became friends, and sort of Berenger knows what he's up to, and stuff. They became friends.
So let's start
Well, he's up to Romanian Orthodox.
Romanian Orthodoxy. Yeah. So we'll start with the book now, and we're going to start right at the beginning with Paul's first column, the first of 1800, on January 17th, 1982. And this is the 63rd Coastal Artillery returning from the First World War and the ensuing celebration, a day of joy and flags and fireworks and dances in the streets. And I had to go back to this same spot, and this is 1919, and I had to go back to the same spot, which is 4th and Pike. And it's now, my job is to find a similar situation or something that will represent our current architecture and somehow find something to play against the old photo. And here's what I found on January 21st, 2017. And this is the largest march in Seattle history, the Women's March.
Some of you were there? Oh, did Bothell have representatives there? The women? That was the day of the inauguration, wasn't it?
Day after.
What's the president's name?
We don't say it.
Something like that. Okay.
So here's Paul's original photo that he took in the fall of 1981 in preparation for the column. And you can see there's a barista. Coffee was quite prominent even then in Seattle. And then she's holding the photo that you just saw of the 63rd Coastal Artillery. And
I hope we gave it to her as a gift.
I hope you did. Let's look at it in the book. Our first column in the book is sequentially, we followed the chronology of the columns as they appeared in the Times. So rather than saying our first column is 1860 and moving forward, we followed Paul's appearance in the Times. So 100 plus columns appear in the order in which they appeared over nearly 40 years.
Did you notice that thing up there? It's projecting this picture onto the screen.
Yes, I did
Isn't
notice
that a
that.
wonderful magic thing?
It is.
It's very nice. Look at that.
So here we have Seattle's deepest snow. And it's from 1880. And on January 4th, the Governor's State of the Union address was published in the Intelligencer. And he wrote that our region was not subject to deep snow and ice. And the day later, that Monday, the snow began to fall, and it fell for 8 days and reached depths of 64 inches. So obviously, this is several days afterwards, but this is a.
This is taken by Peterson Bros photographer, whose studio is directly across the street. So he's taking this photograph from the front porch of the business on the west side of First Avenue, which then was called Front Street, and then that's Cherry, looking up Cherry Street. Now, does anybody here know what that box is doing there on the street? Anybody?
It's a mystery.
It's a mystery.
But what are the buildings on the, as we follow
On
up
the
the
right
right?
is Yesler's Hall, which was the place to go for entertainment, lectures, visiting celebrities when they could make it here, and also institutional, some churches and law proceedings, things like that. And then behind it, on the corner of Second, is the sheriff's home, and behind that, up on Fourth, is the Baptist Church, First Baptist. Well, they're still around. How many of you are Baptists? Raise your hands, please. Oh boy. Let's have a contest. How many of you are Lutherans? Raise your hand. Lutherans win. Very good.
Okay, how many Presbyterians? Okay, yeah, Lutherans still win. Catholics? Any Catholics? Okay, here we go.
Lutherans still win. The Reformation.
They're an offshoot of the Catholics.
What's that?
They're an offshoot from the Catholics.
Everything's an offshoot from the Catholics. Don't kid yourself.
So I went back to this particular spot and found some snowfall. We don't have a lot of snow in Seattle nowadays, but occasionally we have a little dusting. And I went back and did my best, and so occasionally my efforts to repeat met with success and sometimes with near failure. Well, I don't know.
I think it was heroic. He's just trying to put himself down. The efforts he went into to put that, look at that. It's snowing there. He went down there with his camera, and he can prove that there was some, Gene?
Oh, look at that fire hydrant. There's at least 4 inches of snow on top of it. Right there.
Let's hear it for Gene.
Thank you very much.
That's just a little sign of heroism.
Well, my commitment to walk out of the house at 6:30 in the morning and look for snow.
Wonderful.
It was mostly sleeplessness.
I never would have done that. Never, no.
Well, here we have a remarkable photo by Anders Vilse, a man who was in Seattle for only a few years in the 90s, but he ended up moving back to Norway and becoming the great national treasure photographer of Norway. And we'll look at that in just a minute. But here he is looking at the waterfront with his back towards Pike Street. And it's probably 1898 or so.
His back is really to the water.
Back to the water,
The
but
Pike Street foot of, yeah.
so here he is looking at the waterfront, and we're going to now look at the repetition, and you'll see, there we are.
You see Gene's students in this one too. See those kids dancing? Jean's their teacher, and then you see how joyful they are to have Jean as a teacher?
I think they're celebrating the waterfall, to be perfectly honest here. I took them
Jean teaches north of here at Hillside School.
south.
South. For a moment, I thought we were in Renton. Weren't we there last night?
Yeah, a couple nights ago. We're getting confused now. We don't know where we are. I think we should start off by greeting everyone. Say, "Hello, Bothell."
Hello, Bothell. I really prefer Bothell to Renton. Honestly, really, Bothell. We like Bothell.
Of course, I was
How many
born
of you guys
in
were
Renton.
born in Bothell?
How many Bothell birthers?
Okay, how many have lived here for 20 years? Wow, 30 years,
Almost.
40 years, 50 years,
Oh, we have a 50-year.
two of them,
Three.
three of them, 60 years, 1, 2, 70 years, really? You're not 70. You were 70? You're 71, you were born here in Bothell.
Actually, born in Monroe. That's close enough.
Who, in Monroe?
Yeah, that's close enough.
That's all right. We'll count that as Bothell. So you win. Unfortunately, there's no prizes.
Good price.
Well, Paul, we'll come home with you and have dinner. That's for dinner.
Make a decision here. Under the fake sickness.
Okay, let's look at another. We're going to go south a little bit on the waterfront. We're looking at another Anders Vilsa. And I call your attention, this is right during the gold rush. And in a 6-month period in 98, 99, the Yukon Gold Rush we sent more than 100 ships from the waterfront up to Alaska to bringing the would-be gold miners. And here is one of the signs that is selling something to them, and it says portable aluminum houses, weight 150 pounds. So these were men who were going to go up and test themselves with heavy weights.
I would think it'd be colder in an aluminum house than in a snowbank, but guess not.
It probably just cut the wind chill.
Oh, that's a good, yeah.
I like it because all these people, the vast majority of people in this photograph have their back turned to Vilsa. They're headed for the Yukon. They're turned north.
Yeah. Very good, Gene.
Here we are today. There's the Marion Street overpass, and you're looking at the backside of Coleman Dock.
The backside? Oh,
The backside.
Point of view of the ship.
From the point of view of a ship, it's the backside, yeah. So in 2015, Vilsa, who lived, I think, until late 30s, shot 30 plus years all around Norway and is their national documentarian of culture and village life and just scenery. And I grabbed this off a stamp set, and I think this is just fabulous. Look at that, isn't that remarkable?
Beautiful.
All right, so here we are looking down from Smith Tower a year before the observation deck opened to the public. And so a photographer went up and shot through the incomplete observation deck, looking across the city, north across the city, and saw what no one had seen from that perspective before, except for the workers and maybe a couple of the photographers. But there's Queen Anne High School already in place. There is St. James. Here is, of course, the Rainier Club and the Methodist Church, Piers Lake Union. So he's looking down, and today things have changed. And if we go back, and this is from last year, we go back and we take a look. I want you to keep your eyes on the Rainier Club. So in this general location, and then watch for Lake Union in the distance. So. And you can still make out, there it is.
Yes.
There's St. James. And at this point, the Methodists are hidden, their dome is hidden behind a building that we will talk about later, the F5 building. Ooh. Famous photo. Can anyone name the ship that's being tugged out of Lake Union the Monongahela. Can we all say that together? It's such a beauty. It's such a beauty. And it's a four-master built in Glasgow in the 1880s. And it has reached the end of its working life. It was converted nearly, but I mean working life as a sailing vessel. It was sold shortly after this event. It was sold to a Vancouver logging company where they cut down the masts and turned it into a barge to haul logs.
That's not working. Okay.
I think that when a sailing vessel, it would be, let me think, it's like the beauty of a sailing vessel turned into a low-slung barge. I don't know. It would be so disappointing to me. I'd probably prefer to burn down.
Oh, I would.
I would.
All right.
Yeah, losing my masts like that. This was in 1931, mid-1931, just before they finished the cantilevers of the George Washington Memorial Bridge. And here it is today.
Yeah, I want to point out something about this picture, and that is the qualities of Gene's, the picturesque qualities of many of Gene's nows or repeats in the book. You know, look at those clouds and that wonderful group of little boats, and all those happy children swimming in the bay. Where? They're not there, okay. But one of the important things about this book, and this is why you want to buy copies for your relatives in Spinoria, Illinois. Is that where they live?
Spinoria?
I don't remember that. What's the name of the town? Peoria, that's it. Peoria. Because you can send this book, and even if they don't look at the history stuff, they'll be looking at this beautiful display of the city that you live in. So buy 3 or 4 copies and send them on to your relatives in Peoria.
And each of these comparisons comes with Paul's original column, which has been updated to reflect the newer events that have occurred
And
since.
the need for more room for bigger pictures.
That's right.
So we're going to now explore the George Washington Memorial Bridge.
Now remember, we need to pay the printer, okay? All right.
So here we are looking at the Taft Key, which was given to President Taft in 1909 by the fellow who actually discovered gold in the Yukon, George Carhart. And he was one of the handful who became truly wealthy. He decorated a little slab of Alaskan marble with 22 nuggets from his original claim and made a telegraph key out of solid gold and gave it to Taft. And Taft, very soon after, used that key to inaugurate the Alaska-Yukon Pacific Festival, our first World's Fair in Seattle in 1909.
Certainly did.
So, let's go up above now. We're going to take a look at the Aurora Bridge just after it opened on the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, hence the name George Washington Memorial Bridge.
Do you know who was governor during this?
I do.
Roland Hartley.
You're right.
Yeah. In fact, Roland Hartley was someone who was fiercely opposed to the Aurora Bridge. And on February 22nd, 1932, Governor Hartley, who had spent a number of years in opposition, public opposition to the bridge, stood and
He was from Everett.
he stood on the dais, and as they were preparing to cut the ribbon, the crowds had not yet streamed onto the bridge, and he spoke at great length, going well over his time, taking full credit for the bridge. And at 2:57 in the afternoon, Herbert Hoover had his finger on the Taft Key and was ready to press it, and did press it, interrupting Governor Hartley. And the crowds cheered and streamed out onto the bridge. The fireboats shot off their plumes, the flags unfurled, and Hartley never finished his speech. So here they are streaming out joyfully onto this bridge which connected two great hills of Seattle. And we'll look at it today. Now this is an example of a photo that really can't be retaken exactly, and in part because if I go up on the hillside that the original photographer stood on, there's too many trees, there's too many bushes. I'd have to bring a chainsaw. And so what I do instead is I stand right in front of that hillside and I bring my 21-foot long extension pole and I stick the camera on top of that and slide it up into the air. And what you're seeing is 21 feet or so in the air looking down, trying to find the approximation of the original photographer's spot. And that I've used that maybe 6-7 times in the book.
Mhm. He had another one when we did the Washington State book. He had another shorter now and then, a shorter pole. Wasn't it shorter?
It was 10 feet.
Was that all?
That's all it was.
Wow.
So let's look now. Oh, there's Herbert Hoover pressing the button in 1932. And there was another president who used the Taft key in 1962. And it was the last use of the Taft key, and from that it went into the Smithsonian. And of course the fair that he opened was the World's Fair. And here we have a photo from the book of young Donna.
Down the fair.
And she's the 9 millionth visitor to the fair. And was VIP for the day, and she and her proud parents are up on the left. And the beautiful dog that she was given, the enormous dog, twice her size, and her very, very embittered sister. And I called her Donna. Her name is Paula Dahl in that photo. Now Paula Jones, and here she is with her Issaquah class of students, and she still has the 9 millionth sign which she keeps on her wall to impress the kids and tell them the story of how she was once a winner.
The kids start to misbehave. She just points at the sign and they quiet up.
1889, the Seattle fire. Here we are looking at a scene which in a couple of days would be very, very different. This one is a couple hours. It took longer. It took a while for 30 blocks to burn, but this was early in the fire, and all of these structures were destroyed.
Wow.
And you can see up here on top of the Frye Opera House, one guy closer than anybody else looking down. Nobody died, amazingly.
A lot of rats.
A lot of rats down there. Well, let's look at it today. This is from the corner of First and Spring. Lots of brick went up after the fire.
Yeah. You speak the truth. There's some brick before the fire, but it was down on, right there in Pioneer Square, or Pioneer Place as they called it then. You know where the Flatiron block is between James and 2nd and Pioneer Square and Yesler Way? It's triangular shape, hence it gets the name Flatiron.
Let's look at it today.
Yeah, let's look at it today.
I can go back.
No, that's all right. Let's look at it today. Okay, Gene, can we look at it today?
Sure.
There it is, except it's a ways down the street. You see what's the name of that garage down there?
Butler Garage.
What is it?
Butler.
Speak up.
Sinking ship,
Sinking Ship Garage, yeah, that's the popular name. Does it have a real name? I mean, an official name?
Diamond Parking. I
Diamond
don't know.
party.
They own
Diamond
all the
Park-
parking lots inside
Diamond
downtown.
Parking, yeah, Mr. Diamond.
Yep.
He was actually a pretty nice guy, but boy, his business was spelled ruin for the cityscape, that's for sure. But Mr. Diamond himself had a good sense of humor.
Shall we go back to the first
Oh,
photo?
what are we talking about?
We're
Talking
talking
about, there's the same
Yes.
location. We're looking across
Yeah.
that,
So what did they build in its place, Gene?
well, this was the Occidental Hotel, the front of it, and in its place, they did not build yet the sinking ship garage. They actually had a good effort after the fire and tried to replace it with this, the Seattle Hotel, which is here seen in 1908, and that fits the neighborhood. That's kind of lovely. There's the Pioneer Building, which is still there. There's the Seattle Hotel, which sat on the footprint of the Occidental, which was there, burned down in the fire. And today, you will see what we've replaced it with from the front here. There's the sinking ship. So it did, there was one silver lining, which I'm sure some of you know, to the sinking ship garage and to its loss, and that was that it inspired a movement of preservation. And when the Pike Place Market was threatened later in the 60s, Victor Steinbrook and thousands of other citizens gathered together and protested and stopped the Pike Place Market from being disappeared. And they used as their rallying cry the loss of the Seattle Hotel. So sometimes we have to lose things to gain a greater victory. That was a battle that we lost, and maybe
The architects who designed the parking lot were not insensitive fellows. They explained to the citizens that they were going to decorate the parking lot in the style, the Romanesque style of the neighborhood, which you can see if you look at the top of that. You see the rounded pipe up there. Faithfully, that repeats the fenestration on the Merchant Cafe across the street, across the other way. So that was their attempt to placate the fussiness of the local preservation.
I think it shows great sensitivity. And here's the market, 1907, just as it was beginning. When was the corner building built, Paul?
Well, the corner building, you mean the one that's broken down there?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. It was sometime in the, I did write about it though. It was called the York Hotel. And it was early, oh, that's right. In the pictures following the fire, you look at the horizon line up in this direction, and you see it there quite early. So I would say it was built in 1890. Okay? Not that one, that's the one that took its place.
That's what I'm thinking.
They had to tear down the hotel. Why did they tear down the hotel, Gene?
Oh, well, that's an interesting story. There's a little train that runs underneath downtown Seattle, starting in the waterfront and going from Virginia to Washington. It's one of the longest,
It's a long
long line, Virginia to Washington.
Get it? Virginia.
The longest tunnel in Anyway, in building the tunnel, they discovered that the foundations of the York Hotel were undermined, causing significant difficulty, and it was shaking and trembling. So they had to tear down the York Hotel to finish the tunnel. And then here's the corner building that was put up.
Oh, I was watching the kids being taken out of the room. Once again, we inhibit the children from learning about our past.
You know, Paul has a particularly tragic vision, inhibiting the children.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's one for you guys to figure out. Where's this? Come on now, let's think. One of you are going to get this right, I know.
Taken in the mid-1950s.
That's under I-5.
Yeah.
What do you mean under it?
Where I-5 is now.
Yeah.
Well, maybe under's okay. I suppose it's okay. You did get one right earlier and did it very well. We should give you some allowance. And thank you. We should say, you are, sir, correct. Gene?
Well, that photo was taken by Werner Lengenhager in the mid to late 50s. And he was a Boeing worker who carried his camera around and knew that this freeway ditch was about to be dug. And so he documented it north and south and east and west. And we include his north and south shot along Melrose Place, which now the ditch was dug beneath it and Melrose Place disappeared. So both shots are side by side in the book. We show you the one facing downtown. Oh, here we are. Where is this? Quick number, just shout out some guesses here.
Where is this, you guys? Many of you have been here. Well, yeah, you know your stuff. You know, you're gonna have to bow out on this. You've studied things, you know, that's not fair. But Fourth and Union is nearly correct. Where is it? No, you got the wrong way.
Union, right? It's the post office.
That third.
You had a, Union was right. This is Third and Union.
I make that mistake a lot, believe me.
Well, these are steps and pillars made out of delicious chuckanut sandstone.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time. And it was built in 1908, and Seattleites of the time and for the following 50 years would say, meet me at the steps. And you'd meet them, any one of us, down at these particular steps. It's a very popular meeting place. And you can see them. Look at.
Wait,
So why was this building destroyed and replaced by the new?
We're going to.
He's getting into that right now. You jumped a little early. You got a couple of things right. That's not how you just have to interrupt the flow of his rhetoric.
So, right, don't steal the thunder. So there is an answer to this question, and I think I do. It's part of the tragic vision of loss. And sometimes we lose Seattle hotels, sometimes we lose magnificent buildings like this. In this case, it was because it was dirty. It was a dirty building. Not morally dirty, but impure in a cleanliness sense, because pigeons shat on its steps. And they couldn't clean the sandstone sufficiently to satisfy, I guess, the local Norwegians or something. They were upset. It looked.
That's good. How many Lutherans are there here?
We're not necessarily Norwegian.
Okay.
They aren't Lutherans that are Norwegian.
Well, no, you can be a heretic. That's all right.
In any case, they did. So they tore it down in 1958, and they replaced it with the current structure, which does not suffer from pigeon crap, but it also doesn't benefit us with meeting on the steps. So there's no steps to meet on. Across the street from the Benaroya Hall, and it has been called a filing cabinet tipped on its side.
I like that very much. Especially the first one they built, which is very much like this one, but even less appetizing, and that was just a glass curtain, you know, with the little glass squares. Glass curtain building, I think that's what the architects call it.
Here we are at Hooverville, taking the original shot, mid-30s, taken down from the B.F. Goodrich building, which no longer exists.
Did any of you check into Hooverville at all? No, you're too young for that. We're all too young, you know. Wish that we were younger though.
This is around 250 of the 500 shacks that were in this on this site of Port of Seattle. You'll know where we are because of Smith Tower, and I went back. Port of Seattle gave me a hoist, and I got up in the air about 40 feet to retake it. And there we are, looking down, same spot. And now we've moved our homeless off to the right-hand side. Oh, here we are at 34th and Fremont Avenue in 1940, what is it, Paul?
1941, Gene. 41.
Okay, I'll remember that.
We've done this for 20 times, Gene. I insist on calling it 40. It's 41, Gene.
I wasn't alive then. I wasn't 3 years old. You know,
I was, yeah.
Well, this is actually downtown, all of the streetcar rails and streetcars had been removed. They were all gone, replaced at this point by gasoline engines and trackless trolleys. And so this is up north, and one of the last cars, and the motorman took several photos, a lot of pictures of the end of the streetcar era. And some people have mentioned the cow catcher on front, which is pretty cool. And within a year, the remaining streetcars, including this one, were all gone, replaced by tires and gasoline. And so I had to go back and find something to stand in for this wonderful streetcar. A heroic effort.
Heroic Gene Sherrard, and another champion effort on his part.
So let's go to this same corner on the solstice. 2017. And in place of the streetcar, we have a couple women walking abreast.
Are Lutherans? Okay, you're okay.
You know, I thought that as we come on, if the kids were in, we'd give trigger warnings and say, parents, please cover their eyes, especially the parents of Scandinavians. You know.
Would that we didn't have the Reformation.
Here we are on King Street, and the scene has, except for adding color, it really hasn't changed very much. Same structures, same buildings. The Wing Luk Museum is right down here. This is the Go Hing celebration in 1921. You can see Lion Dancer costume on the street, and these celebrants, it's a 6-day festival. And I was reminded in the Seattle Times yesterday, they wrote a rather extraordinary article lamenting the Chinese Exclusion Act, which was passed in 81 and resulted in 86 in Seattle in the riots and anti-Chinese riots. And so many of, you know, and it was not, the act was not repealed until 1943, which is, we're now hitting the 75th anniversary of the repealing. But so many of the immigrants from China had to conceal their status and hide in plain sight. A number welcomed, after the San Francisco earthquake, in which a lot of records were destroyed. In fact, a lot of Chinese Americans used the destruction of those records to remain in the country because of the Chinese. Now, there were no other exclusion acts. It was just Chinese. I mean, you know, it was spectacularly racist and unfair.
A lot of Chinese, you know.
Well, yeah, there were.
So here we go, and what I did to repeat this was to go to the Seattle Kung Fu Club, where I found Sifu Zhang Liang, who is 80 years old and has been there. A couple doors down, there's the Milwaukee Hotel, same spot. He brought his entire school out on the street.
Wow.
And there's Sifu John. And this guy is a West Seattle cop, and he told me, don't worry about taking over King Street for 10 minutes. I'm a cop.
Now, let's think about your relatives in Illinois. How pleased they would be to see the Kung Fu Club gathered on King Street in Seattle. Wouldn't they? I think so. Go ahead.
Oh, here we are. Now this is down south. It was unfair for us. It was an easy question for those Rentonians to answer. Yeah.
Was it last night?
No, it was a couple days ago.
It's been such a buzz. And our taskmaster through all this has been Clay Eels, the scoundrel. I mean, the good citizen over here with the what do you call those camera? He did most of the work of putting all of this PR routine together, and he was for many years in charge of the West Seattle Historical Society, and also before that the editor of the West Seattle Herald. So he cannot be trusted when it comes to anything having to do with West Seattle. He's totally biased for it. And that includes the destruction of the viaduct. He thinks it's a tragedy, a human tragedy.
Okay, now hold off. We're going to get to the viaduct because we're going to see the shot and we can talk about, wait till we get there. You're just jumping ahead with your acerbity and unhappiness. Here we go. So here we are. We are now, we're down south, way down south. This is an outlet coming out of Lake Washington and headed for the Sound. Anyone know what it is? Black River, right off the bat.
You know, you could just go to him. What's your name? George. What is it?
George. It's George.
George.
So here we are in the Black River, which actually, at this point, just a few years later, it disappeared with the lowering of Lake Washington by 9 feet. And so this lovely canoe trip, if we tried to take it today, we would find ourselves on South Rainier with Carl, the manager of the Brown Bear Car Wash. So
Did you stop for a McDonald's burger?
I didn't.
I don't think I've had a McDonald's burger in a number of years.
Use or snow?
No, but I have had a Dick's burger, I have to confess.
How many have had Dick's Burgers here? Raise your hand.
Well, of course.
Oh, yeah. How many of you had a McDonald's burger? Raise your hand. Oh, they did that too.
There's a crossover. There's definitely a crossover.
But Dick's fries are better, right? Am I right? Is there anything better than the whisper of grease? Okay.
That's so.
So,
So these kids, the Brown kids, the dad was a plumber, and he played the clarinet in the most popular of the marching bands.
Is that Pop Wagner?
That's right, Dad, Pop Wagner. Yeah, thanks for I forgot the name. Pop Wagner, right? And they lived right across the streets from the park on Dexter, which was the first park in Seattle. What's the name of it? It's still there. It's got the administration for the public parks there, or at least it had. It's called the Denny Park, named for David and Louisa Denny, who gave the property. You know, it's at Dexter and Denny Way. So they live very near there, and this is very near also to the southeast corner of Lake Union, where the neighborhood would go to swim. This is the southeast corner of the Lake Union, yeah. Now, what's so amusing? Think about this being your class, you know, remember when you were in the 12th grade and the teacher said that to you when you were having a...
You gonna make her pass the note forward?
Let's see the note. I'm sorry.
I'm a teacher.
You're a teacher. Wonderful. That's why we did it. Anyway, so this is the southeast corner of the lake. Now the question for you, and we're going to put the question to you first. This is, you just use the noggin. Southwest corner of Lake Union, okay? What is that trestle there? See that trestle that Gene's pointing at? What is that?
Currently?
What?
Currently?
Yes, currently, although the trestle has changed, it's no longer, the trestle's no longer there. Something else is there where the trestle was. The trestle was taking the place of the trestle. That's a good guess, and we're gonna give you extra special favors, you know, in terms of that, but no, the answer is no, but you're close.
Gasworks?
What?
Gasworks?
It's very close to the gasworks. It's about one lake away. This is the southwest corner of the Lake Union. That is the trestle that was for the, first of all, for the trolley, and then for wagons and pedestrians that went from downtown, or from that neighborhood at the south end of the lake out to Fremont. So that's Westlake. That trestle is Westlake. And then they filled all that in, see? And then Gene went back and, Gene?
wow. I took 2 kids of my neighbors and close friends, Tia and Liana Owen. This was for our Mohai show in 2011, and we repeated that. And I thought, well, for the book, I need to get them today. And I love this photo with their umbrellas, but we went back, and there's Tia and Liana in the same spot, and Tia on the left is 16 and can drive, which is terrifying.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, we've done,
Amused.
On the 22nd show, this is the big O.
Everybody
sees the colocula and says,
oh,
it's true. Well, this is the colocula coming back from Lake Union in 1948 and headed out onto the Sound. And you can see up top all of the people filling the windows and the deck. And way up top, I'm going to point out this little area right here, which is the bridge, or the, what do you call it, Clay?
The wheelhouse.
The wheelhouse. There it is. It's being towed in from Lake Union into the locks and is about to go back out into the Sound. And I had to go back and repeat the colloquial and find something equivalent, or in some sense. And I discovered that there was a boat going through that was large. And it is only after taking this picture and after the fact was I informed that the USS Turner Joy had a significant role in American history, in that it was one of the 2 ships involved in the Gulf of Tonkin. And the first one was USS Maddox, and the Turner Joy steamed to its supposed rescue. And within a few short weeks, it was the result of the skirmish, which may or may not have happened, was the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, which embroiled us in a war that was to last for another 10 years.
only 10?
Well, 64 to 75, a little more than 10.
How many of you remember the end of the Vietnam War? Do you remember where you were when you read it in the paper? Yeah, so do I.
Here's the Turner Joy steaming off the coast of Vietnam. Let's drop back to the wheelhouse. This is a picture that Clay Eels took, Clay of West Seattle, and the wheelhouse is now below, just next to Salty's in West Seattle, so you can visit it to this day. And it's not in the best of shape. The sad story of the colocula I'm not going to tell it all here, but suffice it to say it did not meet a happy end. But the wheelhouse remains, and Clay had the foresight to take from inside, looking at the skyline. There we go. The gals in red, they're walking on a viaduct that is just about to open in April.
How many times did you have to go on the viaduct in order to get something red to repeat the shot?
A dozen. So here we go. We see the gals in red. This is in April, before the viaduct opened, when pedestrians could explore it. And another date is coming up actually in January, where we'll have some time to walk on the viaduct for the last time.
Let's see whether Clay is going to do that. Clay, are you going to walk the viaduct on the last day?
Yes, and it's the weekend of February 2nd and 3rd. I think it's Saturday the 2nd is when anybody can walk on it all day. And it's a very sad occasion, because this is the most spectacular lay-of-the-land view of Seattle for rich or poor. And it's also the lifeline for the communities who live north and south of it, West Seattle, Ballard. And we're trading it for 2 lanes each way underground that don't stop downtown.
And toll.
And you have to pay for the privilege.
All right, now it's time to vote. All those who would like to leave the viaduct there and forsake. No. You can ask that this be a vote from before the decision. You can change the decision. You want to keep the viaduct and forget about everything else. All those in favor of that, raise your hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those for the modern, beautiful. I tell you, they say that they really made a tunnel that's a beauty. All those for the beautiful tunnels, 2 of them. Raise your hand. 1 hand, 2, 3. So there's a lot of people that just don't know, Gene. Yeah, they don't know. They don't want to expose themselves here. Now, there's a woman in the back with her head against South America. How do you feel about the tunnel?
I really don't have much of an opinion.
Half an opinion. You see, there's not great activism among the citizens on this. You see that going?
Well, we're in Bothell.
We don't drive it too often.
They don't care about the tunnel nearly as much as in the city limits.
Yes, go ahead.
I have thoroughly enjoyed walking that for Seafair over the years. There's a race. And to get up there and look at Mount Rainier, and then to look at the, you know,
The Great Wheel.
and then look at the Olympics, walking it. Has been one
Yeah,
of
so
the
you'd like
delights
them to
of my
keep the
life.
viaduct just so you could go up there once a year and walk on it. Yeah, all right, really, that, you probably see how you're prejudiced, really. Okay, I'm gonna
Okay.
vote now. All those, let's vote again, we've had more evidence. All those for keeping the viaduct, raise your hand, please. Remember, you'll be really making clay feel very good.
Turn it into a park and grow trees.
Turn it into a park and what?
Grow trees.
Grow trees on the viaduct?
It was a proposal.
Yeah, they had it, they were thinking about making a high line like they have in New York.
I wrote a history of the waterfront. You can't tell me I don't know about things like that. I know a history of all the different proposals that goes way back. I can tell you about the first person who even thought of the viaduct. It was a council person called Mrs. Miracle. She lived on Capitol Hill. She was the one who proposed the viaduct.
Well, I had to drive around a number of times before I found the Smith Tower along with a red car. So here we go.
That's funny. I thought we were already here.
No, you jumped forward.
But this is in April of 2017, and I would abuse my son and my friends who have cars with moonroofs, and I'd stick myself up through the moonroof and we'd make the circuit. And when we'd actually wait at the entrance until a car passed in front of us that was red, and then follow it. I said, Ethan, get left in.
The guy's a hero, the guy's a hero.
And so, and sometimes it would pull away, suspicious, wondering what the hell are they doing? This guy's tailing me, so they escape. But I want you to pay attention to this. Let's take a look at this structure here, which is now called the F5 building. And when it was built, it was called the Mark. And it's just about being finished in April of 2017, and it's now done. We're going to go to it today. Paul and Clay and I really like it, and I didn't know quite why I like this building.
We had to find something to assuage and give compromise to our differences of opinion on the tunnel and the viaduct.
Yes.
And we found this.
So we found this as a point of agreement, and it was just something lovely about this structure, and it appealed to me, and I like the way it cants in and has kind of a cocky regard, and there, well, you know, like a thumbing of the nose and sort of a slant and a stance, and there's the Methodist dome down below. It's still there. I just took this about a week ago, and so. How did it come to this? Who decided on what this would be? And it turns out the developer Eric Daniels was a big fan of Audrey Hepburn. And in the foyer, as they were building this structure, they had this enormous picture, this photo from Breakfast at Tiffany's of Audrey Hepburn. And look at her stance, look at her hips, look at the cigarette holder, go back. And he said, I want the grace and the savoir-faire and the structure of Hepburn.
And that sort of works, doesn't it?
It does kind of work. Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Do you remember the popular song in that?
Moon River? What song?
Moon River? Oh, Paul. Moon River, that's it. You guys know how to sing that? Well, let's try it together, huh? Okay, Gene prepared for us. We did say we had been out 21 times before the turn. All right, guys, let's sing this together. Who knows the pitch? Moon River, is that too high? Moon River. Okay, here we go. We're all gonna sing now because you know this song. Here we go. Nobody quiet. You ready? Moon River, wider than a mile. I'm crossing you in style someday. We went a little low on it, didn't we? Oh, dream maker, you heartbreaker, wherever you're going, I'm going your way. Two drifters off to see the world. There's such a wide world to see. We're after the same rainbow's end, waiting round the bend, my huckleberry friend, Moon River and me. All right, now here comes the important question. What the heck is a huckleberry friend? Anybody know? What is that?
I was thinking Huckleberry Hound. No, just kidding.
Huckleberry Well, it could be.
Going down the.
What? Going down the river in the raft.
Right,
So-
Huckleberry Finn.
What is a
Huckleberry Finn,
friend?
Huckleberry Finn, my Huckleberry
Mark
Finn
Twain.
friend. Playing off of Huckleberry Finn.
I don't know.
Mark Twain.
That's a good,
So how did we do
You may be
compared to all the
right.
others? Were we fabulous?
Yeah, you were Mark.
this was the best, you had all the words,
That helps.
it was excellent.
Sorry that we fished. Go ahead, two drifters together, Huckleberry Finn.
Two drifters off to see the world.
I think
It's Huck
you
and Jim.
got it. You guys got it.
Okay. You know, this was written by Henry Mancini for the movie, and his favorite version of it is this kind of breathy, sweet little vibrato-less version that Audrey Hepburn sings in the movie as Holly Golightly.
You have to say that, Gene.
Of course I did. We have to give it some context. Oh, no, Frank Sinatra did it, and who was that
Andy
guy?
Williams.
Yes, and Andy Williams,
Williams.
who also sang the great Seattle classic. No, that was Perry Como. Yeah. Shall we sing that now? We just finished with the sing-along. We're almost done anyway. Let's sing now. So this is Green Lake. We're closer to my dig. It's taken by Ashel Curtis.
Gene lives right up there on the right. See those trees?
Yep.
He lives right near those trees.
Right up there near what is now Blanchette High. And so this is 1903, a little panorama taken by Ashel Curtis. And the area has changed since then, as you might imagine. So keep your eyes on the lovely Olympics in the distance. You'll see a little slice of them, and that's about it. And the bird. Yes, right below the bird, there's the Olympics. And this is another picture which would take, in this case, I think I went back 6 times and spent maybe 6 hours trying to get this.
I don't believe you. 6 hours?
Well, an hour at a time. I'd stand there with my 21-foot pole because I was looking for something because it's a
bird, maybe?
well, I didn't expect the bird, but I did get the school bus and the bicyclist and the other.
What's the street
So,
over behind?
this is 70th.
Play cards or something.
So now we're approaching, well, this is the oldest structure still standing in Seattle. And it is still standing. It's been moved a block from where Doc Maynard built it in the early 1860s. They replaced his house that burned down. He moved to West Seattle in 1858. And the first house burned down. He started a farm with his second wife, Catherine Maynard. And this was the house that replaced it. And when did the Hanson family buy this house, Paul?
1869. That was also the year that the woman in the white apron on the porch was born, 1869. Her name was April.
So this must be in the 1890s if she's about 18 or 20 years
Yeah,
old.
it's in the 90s, yeah.
And the woman next to her is her mother.
Her mother, yeah, Anna Hansen.
And this is her father.
The black outfit is her father.
She's
Hansen.
Hansen.
Played a pretty good violin, and Actually, April also taught music.
Huh.
She had a piano and taught music.
She had a son that all of you might remember.
Ivor Haglund.
Oh.
That's Mrs. Haglund, who only lived 2 years after her marriage to Ivor's dad. She got cancer and was then treated by the starvation diet. And she lasted not quite as long as she might have. Probably terrible, feeling terrible too, huh?
And this is the evil Hanson cousin. We think of him as Snidely Whiplash.
She did get into a legal tussle with Ivor's mother because Ivor's mother took care of the parents because she was the youngest child, and that was sort of traditional. The youngest child had the responsibility. They were strong, you know, and hadn't got a career yet, so she took care of the parents, and they gave her more property, you know, as a benefit. And this, she didn't have any children yet at that point, and that disappointed, what's his name again?
Snidely.
I know his real name, but I can't think of it. Well, Snidely then took her to court and lost. He lost. The court did not take away her extra bounty from the parents.
Good.
Well, let's look at it today. It's a block down the street. It lost a little bit of the right wing. Question? Yeah. I don't know.
We don't know.
I'm sorry, but it's a great
Yeah.
photograph. It's amazing.
It was loaned to Paul by Ivar. So, in the...
We also put together the Ivor archive. A friend of mine and I did that, and it's there. It's in the archive.
So here it is today, and it's down the street on 64th Avenue. The address is in the book. We won't tell it to you unless you buy it. You can read it. And there's Clay Eels, the director of the Southwest Historical Society at the time, and
What
his
do you guys remember Clay
Southwest
from?
friend.
Huh?
Put together your
What's that?
schedule, right?
He did the schedule. He wrote the introduction to the book, and was the editor-in-chief. So he looked for all the ins and outs, the typos and
Several
contradictions.
books. He wears nice clothes.
Tangent alert, tangent alert.
So we go forward now, and you can see at the very end of the street, this is a plaque that sits near where the house originally stood, but there's nothing to indicate that the oldest house is the oldest house, so you'll have to walk down the street in search of it.
Oh, it does say down at the bottom, the oldest standing piece of architecture.
But it's a block away.
Right.
Isn't that what I just said, Clay?
No, you said it doesn't say that it's the oldest house.
I'm
Anyway,
saying
whatever.
How do you know what it's referring to?
That's true.
We're so close to the end.
That's true.
20-second show.
Try not to let this hassle, this agreement, this flare come alight.
Here we go.
Boy, Clay blew it. He brought it up.
So here we are
Okay.
with Princess Angeline, named by, as it happens, Catherine Maynard, monikered by. Her actual name was Kiki Soblu. She was the daughter of Chief Seattle, and here she is sitting in her shack down below Western. Paul and Ron Edge, who's sitting in the back. Ron?
Ron's right here.
Everyone look at him. I won't point the laser at you.
Stand up, Ron, please.
I will not. So,
Ron will never stand up. The reason is because he's really tall, and he doesn't want to humble us with his statuesque qualities.
so here we are looking at...
How are you?
I'm tall. So here we are looking at Princess Angeline and her palace. Ron and Paul, to make a long story short, they triangulated everything from stumps to eaves
Mostly Ron,
mostly Ron, and found actually where Princess Angeline's shack was after more than 100 years. And Ron and I went down last November and took this photo. And Ron is sitting on the porch, or where we think the porch might have been.
Right over there again, in the khaki shirt.
And you'll recognize him. in the same shirt. I think you're wearing the same shirt today.
You wear that on purpose.
So here we are, Pike Place Market Garage on the left, and the Fix Medor building on the right. And there's about a half block to the south, there's the Pike Place Hill Climb, but this is the only little green space open to the air in below Western, except for the hill climb. And I found that wonderful, because I thought, well, what they're going to find, what Ron will discover is that we're in the basement of somewhere and we're looking at a car or a heater or a steam burner. But we came out and we're looking down from on high. It took us you can't get there because it's gated, it's completely closed. If you live in the Fix Medor building, you can sneak in from one of the little doors attached to like a little fire door, but you can't get here. And there's nothing to mark the spot. But Clay is going to tell you.
But you can see this if you go to Pike Place Market and go to Lowell's restaurant. You know where Lowell's is, right there in the market, and go up to the second floor, take your food up there, and look out the window, and straight down below you is this greenery. That's the spot.
The bamboo.
Thank you.
So here we are now. We're back. We'll stick with Kiki Soblu. And here's a classic portrait from the early 90s by another unknown photographer, sitting in what is now the Pike Place Market in Post Alley, and with First Avenue or Front Street behind her. And we've inset Chief Seattle into this photo. We've made a little montage for this reason. We found a couple of direct descendants of both of them, and here they are in the same spot. And on the left is Mary Lou Slaughter, who is a great-great-great-great-granddaughter of Kiki Soblu. And to her right is Ken Workman, who's the great-great-great-great-grandson of Chief Seattle through his second wife. And so the two of them came out. Mary Lou is a skilled worker of cedar. She makes baskets and hats and these magnificent shawls. And so Ken and Mary Lou put on the cedar vest and the shawl, the cape, and posed for us. And as they were posing, Ken has come to several of our shows, and he's told this little story, which is, our next slide will give you a little context. So here I am taking a picture of the two of them, and they're wearing the cedar hats that Mary Lou created. And we had to take them off because the shadows were not not the way we prefer. And so we spent maybe 5-10 minutes shooting this photo, and Clay Eels took this picture of me taking their picture. And Ken turned around a couple of times, worried that someone was trying to get past him. Maybe they were trying to pick his pocket, maybe they were trying to push past him. And finally I said, what's going on, Ken? What are you looking around for? He says, well, there's someone trying to get past. Let's hurry this up. And both Clay and I are watching, and no one approached Ken, but afterwards he said, it was because I kept feeling a tap on the arm, tap, tap, on my elbow. Just 2 fingers, tap, tap. And Ken's interpretation is it was a familial tap. It was a distant cousin who was suggesting that, get out of my way, I'm still here. I tend to think that I would prefer to call it a nudge from history. And it's the same for me, and Paul will tell you this is my metaphor, I'll accept it. For me, it's the moment when I find myself locking into a position and I see what a photographer once saw 100 years before, and I'm right where their eyes are today, and I get a little bit of a click, a little sound that kind of, a little talk that locks me into place. So,
just 20 feet behind Gene, maybe 30, is the coffee shop on the Pike Place that turns down and goes, to the gum wall, where they give tours on the ghosts of the market. So in a way, I think that Gene may be in cahoots with the owner of that. And
now you won't hear this story in the book, only in the show. But later it was, and again, Ken shows up sometimes and graces us, and we let him, we ask him to tell it himself, but ask him. I'm sorry, I apologize on behalf of me and you and Clay. Well, thank you very much. I would only say that this is the back cover of our book, and I would only urge you to go to pauldorpat.com, where every Sunday there is an amplified and expanded version of the column that appears in the paper. If you haven't visited, you should take a look, because Paul generally puts up dozens of supplementary photos to accompany the two that appear in the paper. You can click on the photos at the top and you will see them much larger on your computer screen, and you can zoom in ways that you can't in the Seattle Times.
How many of you look at the column on Sundays? So the majority of you. How many of you look at the blog? One person, two people, three people. Well, I mean, the blog is so much better. Why don't you use it?
Now we know.
So I definitely suggest go and look.
It's there. It's been waiting for you for 12 years.
You will also find supplements to the book, because we couldn't put all the original columns in the book, but we have very, very smart volunteers who have Gavin McDougall, for one, who has made a PDF of all of those original columns that sprinkle through the book. If you go to the blog, you can look at each one, compare, and over the next few months, we're putting up all 1,800 columns that appeared originally in the Times, and they will all be searchable. And this is the only place on earth, aside from the hard copies in Paul's basement, where you can actually find those 1,800 columns in their full spectacle.
I would say that's not necessarily the truth, because if the truth is okay, but I mean, it's not necessarily true, because there's a lot of people that have collected these through the years, and I suspect that there exist in people's basements. The collection, sometimes the whole collection. A couple of times I've been given collections of these things. I haven't been given them in 10 years or so, but on 2 different occasions, people brought me their collections. So it's possible that they exist in people's somewhere.
But fortunately, that doesn't matter, because we have made copies, and they're all PDF searchable, and you can find them on the blog. Little OCD stuff going on. Yes, Clay.
Gene, before we close up, and we will be selling books, and you can get Gene's and Paul's inscriptions, but talk just for 30 seconds about the logistics and timing of getting a book before Christmas if you don't get one today.
Well, we have been mailing the books out. Here's what happened to us. There's a little trade war that's been going on with China, and so as our publisher is a Seattle publisher who publishes all the books for HistoryLink, but with trepidation, we advanced through the summer and into the fall, thinking that the books were going to be here in the 3rd week of October. And as it turned out, they didn't arrive until the end of November. So we had about at least a dozen book shows without any books to sell. We had a small number. I tell a lie. We had 150 books that we had air freighted over at rather significant expense. So we had something to sell to people. But what happened then was we had 250 orders or so bottlenecked up off of the website, and we would say to people who came to the book shows, please go and you can pre-order to guarantee yourself a copy. But in the end, after one of the ports in China, the Shenzhen actually stopped sending out a number of boats to the States in protest of the trade war. And the printer scrambled to find another boat out of Hong Kong, and it took about 5 weeks. So we didn't get a book. It took us an extra 6 weeks of. So that's hence our last minute sales. With the book has finally arrived. The bottleneck is through. I'm thinking that most likely we've been sending out through the mail inscribed copies. But we're reaching up right against the edge of what's possible with the Postal Service at this point. So if you're interested in getting a signed copy, it's either here or at University Bookstore next Saturday. And we encourage you to do so. Yes, any questions? Okay, well, yes.
Are there other cities, countries doing what you guys are doing?
We've had a debate about this. Paul would say you never want to say generalize in any way, shape, or form, but we've never found another city in this country that has done this. It's not being done in San Francisco, it's not being done in LA, it's not being done in Chicago. All the places that we've looked for, it's not being done in New York. There's certainly repeat photography, but on a weekly basis over nearly 40 years, you're talking about the guy who really who's put it together in a way that it as far as we can tell, doesn't exist anywhere else. So without saying affirmatively and absolutely yes, as far as we know,
You're talking about now and then, is what you're talking about?
we're talking about a
I thought
weekly
you
column.
just meant heritage.
No, we're talking about a weekly column
Now and then, okay.
that goes on.
That could be.
And basically what we're talking about is honoring a guy who originated this weekly format, and I think he deserves a huge round of applause here.
Thank you, Paul.
A lot of reasons I don't deserve that applause, so we can balance out. And we'll just leave it go there.
And thank you, Bothell,
very much. Thank you
for
very
showing
much.
up. Historical Society and the library.
Lutherans among
Thank
you
you.
especially.
Thank you.
I do have.
And this was just
So I was wondering if you had an email where I could correspond and ask questions.
Paul@dorpat.com. The name? @dorpat.com. It's easy, I can't think of an easier.
Paul
@dorpat.com.
You see, it's right here. Are you buying a book?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
right
can
here.
actually, I can
Is this
put,
your book right here?
should I put his email in the book?
Why don't I just put
Oh, sure.
Paul?
No, this isn't. Is this your, that's your book?
Well, I don't know, that's debatable. I paid for it, so I don't know if it's her book.
Well, you can assert provenance.
You can do any damn thing you want now. You can go home and take a nap.
That's what you'd like, we already have.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's
My
right.
question is, should I display it above or below the autographed copy of Don Jr. by Louis Vidal?
Yes.
Vidal, yeah. He was an old friend of mine.
No, we gotta have those, Paul will put the star.
Vidal, you're talking about Sons of the
Stars
Prophets.
stars and what's better.
Sons of the Prophets.
No, Doc Maynard's second book is one I've got.
Oh, the Doc Maynard book, yeah.
Don't you have
You
Sons of
should.
That I was reading the first column.
He was working on that and then he died right after.
This was long ago when someone got the first edition of the autograph. I read it, I finally decided I was retired, I read it this last year, and it's an interesting book.
Talked him into it.
I've got it in my library, so I can read it. But I've got so many other books in my library, it just gets overwhelmed. Is this yours?
This is,
Thank you very much.
this is almost where
You know, some of the first histories were written by Herbert Denny. And he's
300,000
sales
photographs around the world,
creation,
index them and try to figure out.
And Spidell, after he did Sons of the Prophets, he did a lot more research and found out it was really Doc Maynard in Seattle.
Well, it was a mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for
Vidal was inclined for
Maynard had already had people in line for Whistler in line and people like that. He kind of had orchestrators come in and get the city
I'll
going.
have to read the book.
Yeah, you need to read that.
what was the history?
Seattle.
You guys go home and have a book.
We were here then, now we're here now.
We quit getting the Sunday Times, so we're kind of out of the loop.
You know, I I just take the Sunday Times, that's all.
I had a fair.
And then I get online things. Times have changed.
Yeah, well, my son was getting the Sunday Times to look at the job ads. He decided it wasn't worth it anymore last.
With the entire length of
Better
Wall Street.
online.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then another photographer went back.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
That's my feeling.
You know, there's a wonderful, there's an absolutely wonderful book.
Be good to your pets.
And I've forgotten what it is, but it's about a tree. It just came out in the last year. And it's basically
What's
follows
up?
the life of
Ron,
that
come
tree.
here, Ron.
Planted in 1850.
But there are a lot of oil people on the ground.
And it follows the life of that tree as he takes it. It's a novel, it's by such a
Ron.
but it's incredible. It's just
Like your view. We're documenting your site.
It's all about that tree and the farm family and the Dakota or something.
Seen a lot of history.
Yes, it's a lot of history and life and death.
Like
And it's
the
just
Shell Silver Skin. Thank you. Enjoying your call? Early
no
80s.
inscription.
Yeah, started 82.
Paul will put the star at the top.
And I think you came to my library instruction class to talk about
Does a
that.
heck of a beautiful. You see what the Margaret Turcotte since.
Oh, I look like a lot of people.
What library was it?
I was at the Chinese School
Oh,
library.
thank you. Well, wait till he was a star.
And you were a
Came to
student?
class.
Really
I was a
flowers
student.
with the star.
Did you become a librarian?
Yes.
And what library did you do?
I built the City University Library, and then I did Snohomish, and then I went overseas as a consultant for libraries at the various embassies and consulates and partnerships.
You had a star, Paul.
We're gonna add a star for that.
Yeah,
Isn't that a wonderful star?
that's a beautiful story. Shocked. Thank you.
You're going to share with me. Thank you so much.
Looking forward for more thens and nows.
You're very nice, I like you.
Losing weight is not a Howdy. Howdy. All right, let's see. How do we want to say?
Well, we're kind of the Bothell.
Well, Dawn and Clint, the silly Bothell. So Dawn, D-A-W-N? Yes. And Clint, C-L-I-N-T? Like Eastwood.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Handle with care.
Thank you guys so much for coming.
Good luck, Dawn. This your friend here?
Yes, my friend.
So the app, we enjoyed your show.
I remember you sitting back there in front of South America.
Yes, that was me. That was me in front of South America. I had to check the map because it was me and it was the person next to me.
Yeah, she couldn't fix it. I tried to complain about the $1 billion, put the billions.
No, we just don't get over there too often, so I don't really think I have the right to vote on it.
Genus Lutheran, 10 years. Way back when.
What do you do? You for it or against it?
Now, I'm interested in the court fight that's going to happen. That's all I'm saying. The court fight, who's going to pay for the overhead?
In the court fight.
Down Viking ship.
But there's a whole bunch of, millions and hundreds of millions of dollars of overruns, and who's going to pay for it? State contractor, the city of Seattle.
Just get a good book. Done right down to read it.
Yeah. I got to write it.
Can't do anything about it.
No, I'm just.
Overruns are always the case.
That's true.
That's how I spent it.
That one would work for me.
We don't want to say Lutheran. Yeah.
Agreed. Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, we really enjoyed it.
DC, huh? There we go.
Just my daughter bought it for me. It's got a nice big bill on it for the rain to keep on.
Paul put the star on the top.
Care about.
So much better. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I don't remember which of you two talked about the historian in the 50s with the last name of
Oh, boy.
Historian, Murray. Well, that's Paul's mentor, Murray. He wrote a book called, which is a very famous Seattle town called Skid Row. Skid Row, okay. That's what I wanted. Basically, there's the inscription for your fellow Lutherans.
I'm no longer part of the Lutheran.
Murray, you're part of the genus, Murray Morgan, Skid Row. Yes. And it's still in print after. They have it here.
55 years. I'm sure they have it. Okay.
Yes, I do too. Well, no, I don't have it on the spreadsheet yet. Well, it's all in it's all the ones here in the library.
So, first of all, it's spelled L-E-S. Okay. So to Les Frederick.
Something.
How would you say the something?
Thank you very much.
We're going to say,
I like your smiling face with
yes,
that
I will have
third row back on the right. You gave me courage today.
Yeah, we didn't want you to be right.
Les Frederick.
It's the way I've got it. We're relatively new to the area, so
Right.
been here 4.5 years, and
Right, so
since I've lived here,
Where did you come from?
from Humble Ballard to
San Francisco and Atlanta.
Well, he doesn't.
So he claims from.
Well, he doesn't know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And all this
Yeah, all right.
Well, I hit it.
And now he's
Now.
It's a good Right, so what, how should we identify this? From Ballard / Fremont?
No.
But not Ballamont?
Can we have the next person up here?
What would you say, Paul, what would you call someone who's confused about whether they're from Ballard or Fremont?
Well,
Freelard.
Just confused.
Freelard. Right.
where does this go?
It's going to me.
From beautiful Freelard.
I'm George.
Yeah,
go ahead.
From fabulous Freelard.
Remember the time we never did.
I'll just say Ballard Freelard.
No,
George is George.
That's right.
That makes it fun. The
from
laugh.
Ballard.
From Ballard Freelard.
Text.
Okay.
See, we don't have that problem in West Seattle. You know where West Seattle is. There's no unconflict.
Ballard / Freelard.
No, Fremont. If you pick Ballard.
Okay, I will do Fremont.
And that's what the historians picked up.
And what my dad ended up doing was, he went to Yale and he was an English major at Yale.
Cook is C-O.
Then,
Just
K.
2 O's and a K, no E.
Les was a Russian.
then it's to do with the Russian. My dad figured, he did a minor in biology and came to UW, became a doctor, went to medical school. He realized there's nothing to do with
Only about 5% are
even, well, that
explains that.
Okay, Paul will put the star up top, because
Drones that, you think is a skill.
Could you make it to the wonderful person who owns this book?
to the wonderful person who owns this book.
And everyone owns it after me.
Well, anyway, she went,
Nice snowman.
To
New Hampshire and bought a house in this small.
Oh, that's
wonderful
So that's easy. You mean Steve? Yeah.
person.
And she found.
Okay, there you go. Is that good
Sign
enough?
it? Yeah.
She started
Sign
getting
it also.
sitting
To Frederick?
joined the DA.
That's Frederick.
And so she said.
How long have you been together? You,
We've been married 42 years.
wow.
How long we've been together? 50.
Yeah,
Yeah, we were
Building
proud.
value, might as well.
yeah.
And I started looking at
You've been a good wife.
Blessings.
I didn't have to put it in password.
I had you want to update.
Watch out, don't trip now, don't trip. Don't trip, you guys.
different now.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Careful, bye-bye.
he settled in Rehoboth and.
All right, you want a tree?
That's supposed to, yeah.
Well, I'm gonna let Paul do the tree, because he's been doing cross hatchings on the tree, which are really, really an advance on my tree.
Backstory is,
And they left
you're my
Salem
hero.
because they weren't really welcome there because they didn't share
I
the
own
same
a
character.
local business that turned 80 this year. I love local
They
history.
had a ring
But
dream.
would you
and
please inscribe
like
it
50
to
people
my
that had
stage name, Miss
properties
Red
around
Delicious?
this ring, and he was-
Miss Red Delicious.
Yeah, and then his son.
I will.
So that's all you have to do.
Thriving, established
Under that name.
communities.
Oh, we're out here, we're out here talking about historic
No, it's already
already, I got it up. So all you have to do would be push that button and then you just took a picture to keep it.
Strawberry Bank, where they transplanted a bunch of the historic houses from the 16 and 1700s.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we go back to 18.
If you wouldn't mind, I want to have a photo of me standing behind the both of you.
Do you want it on video?
No.